OG Kunta, as a black man, though, aren't you happy that Sheriff Lamb is getting rid of these illegal immigrants? Because don't they affect the black community the most by taking all the social services and the jobs?
Well, let's get into that. Well,
Please.
personally, I'm not gonna point the finger at them. I think the economy.
Who's them, the illegal immigrants?
Yeah, I'm not gonna point the finger at the illegal aliens because the border patrol failed.
Yeah.
They got to this brother's point, and I just say, man, good work, bro, that you did catch some people who were being smuggled. Because you're right, in a community it is a problem.
Yeah, but talk about this real quick, though, OJ Kunta, because we only have the sheriff for a short amount of time. You're a Crip gangbanger, right? And you would say the Crips are a pretty tough gang.
They are.
But which gang would you say is tougher? The Tren de Arruga from Venezuela, when they kill people, they cut out their tongue and they pull their tongue through the throat?
Well,
they don't do that in the Crips,
No, we don't do that. No, we ain't nothing like that. We simply just hang in the neighborhoods, drink.
Sell a little weed and drink some beer. I know. So, Sheriff Lamb, can you tell us the difference between a Crip, a gangbanger, and these Tren de Arrugas that you're busting constantly?
No,
yeah, absolutely. Look, I've dealt with Crips, gangs, Southside 18th Street. I was a gang and drug detective for a long time. So one thing about guys like OJ Kunta is there is a code that they live by, a respect code. Right. Even with law enforcement, there's a respect code. And they don't like the cops who don't respect that code that exists between law enforcement and the guys on the streets. We understood that code. Tren de Aragua has their code is they couldn't care less about human beings. You will never, it's not often. These kids are different nowadays. OJ Kunta will tell you. The gangster kids on the street nowadays are a lot different than the OG gangsters. They're losing that whole code, I think.
Yep.
But the Tren de Aragua, man, they have no respect for life. They will hurt women, kill women, children, and that's typically not what I see from gangsters. And they typically, like Bloods, Crips, they want to control a portion of their neighborhood, drug sales within that neighborhood, whatever it is that they're getting money or whatever it is from. They stick to that. Tren de Aragua, man, these people have no respect for America. And ultimately, whether you're a gangster, if you're an American, you still love this country. Yeah, those people are not Americans. They don't love this country.
I'm still a patriot. I believe it.
And that is
100%.
That is what separates us from.
And I will die to defend this place.
OJ Kunta, I feel like I cut you off a couple times. I had some questions I had to get out. So what did you get? What did you want to ask him? I apologize.
Okay, Mr. Sheriff, I really first of all, I want to commend you, brother. I can see the wisdom behind you. I really can. And I admire and respect you for that. I really don't like the cops. I'm a gangbanger. Mm-hmm. You've been, you know our history. The cops and the gangbangers, we've been enemies for years.
Yeah.
But my wisdom, and growing up as a youngster, through my trial and errors of, making mistakes and, doing better and, improving, what I'm saying?
You have done some time.
Yeah.
How much time did you do?
I did 6 years.
6 years. And
after,
now he's good. Now you've been out of jail.
Yeah,
he's reformed.
I've been out of jail. I'm reformed. After, reforming myself and, trying to be a pillar of the community rather than a detriment to it, I began to understand the necessity for police, you see. So I understand that the police are needed. You know what I'm saying? We can't say that, we don't need the cops. We can't say that.
Yeah, defunding the cops. So that's kind of our last thing. We wrap it up. When you see all these protesters saying defund the cops, I mean, what would a society be without cops? Honestly, Sheriff Lamb, if we did defund.
Well, when you talk about defunding the cops, you know who's affected by that? Low-income communities. The rich people will always have the cops in their neighborhoods. Right. Who's going to be affected are those low-income communities, and not just Black, Hispanic, white communities. Anywhere where there is low income, it's going to increase crime in those areas. And OG Kunta's right. Look, I told you I was a gang drug detective, and it's the cat. Well, the mice will never like the cat, and the cat will never like the mice. But what we have to try to do is kind of come together some days like Tom and Jerry used to. And I love OG Kunta that you've come back, and because I think there's a place for your voice and strong voices like yours for these youngsters out there in the community.
Appreciate that.
Who haven't quite gotten that wisdom that you've picked up over the years. But just to your point, Alex, and to your point, OG Kunta, cops are needed for as much as we don't like them. Look, I don't want to be pulled over by the cops either. And I was a cop. Right. But in the end, we need them. because you'll have sheer lawlessness if you don't. And the lawlessness will be most affected in those low-income communities where you need it most.
I like to recall the situation, if you don't mind. In my community, there was a young man who was shot to death. And the cops were called. And the cops came, but since the cops couldn't arrest anyone, they left. And right after the cops left, the guy was shot and killed.
Wow.
So my question to you, because you're definitely a big influence in law enforcement. My thing would say, we definitely need more cops, but I think we need more education, with the cops as far as how to deal with, people.
You need young black people need education on how to deal with law enforcement?
Now, the cops need education.
Well, I think what he's saying is the cops need more education. Look, we got a bunch of youngsters out here, much like the young gangsters nowadays, that don't know the code anymore. And they necessarily don't know how to go into a community and talk to people and be part of the community. Even though you're still the cat, you still got to be part of that community so that when they do need help, they're willing to call you and they know they're going to get quality service. And OG Kunta's not wrong. We've kind of lost that in our profession where a lot of these young guys don't want to dedicate themselves to their craft. They don't want to be the best that they can be. They don't oftentimes want to be part of the community. They're clocking in, they're hitting their 40 and they're going home. Where on the other hand, we truly wanted to reduce crime. We wanted to have an impact in the families that lived in our communities. And so I agree with OG Kunta, and that's why I go around, I speak all over the place. I try to impart some of what I've learned, try to bring that common sense, human approach, but still with a hard line on the law to that, because I think there's a way to balance that and you can be part of the community and have success.
My grind so refined, I got no time for no games. Ask yourself